glass and the technology and programming of the kiln and the creativity involved in making the colors and the different styles just really appealed. And I began taking classes from well-known glass artists around the nation and, honing in on my skills to the point where it became my new obsession after my corporate world.
When was that? What year was that you started?
Uh, full full time going at it was 2015.
Okay, that's a good chunk of time, 5 years. And how long do you think, could you say, it took to really get the technique down for you to be able to come out with these pieces?
I'd say it took me 2 to 3 years to really get to where I was beyond the basics of just understanding glass and the programming of the kiln and what the glass could do, and then you're really working through most of the techniques that are in the gallery. I would say it took me 2 to 3 years to master.
Mm-hmm. And did you practice any art before getting into glass? Any other mediums?
Not in many years. My corporate job was a 24/7 job.
All right, yeah. Well, that's exciting that this is a whole new medium for you, even though it's been 5 years, that it's something that has really stuck with you, and now you have this whole body of work to show for it. And it's really amazing to see it in one space and all the different ways that they can be put on the different stands that you have or hung up on the wall. You've really figured out a lot of different methods of presenting this new addiction that you have working with the glass. It's exciting.
But many challenges.
Yeah. It's like we have another addition to our talk, Virginia. Hello. And Marissa. Just getting everybody settled. Oh, let me get my... So let's talk more about the different stands and the ways that you've troubleshooted and problem solved working with glass, and where that transfers from working with the glass in your studio and bringing it into a gallery or somebody's home.
Okay, so you want to talk more about how I'm displaying the art?
Sure.
Okay, so on the sculptures, there's lots of ways I can do it and do it, from freestanding, where I just grind the glass and curve it in some way so that it will stand on its own. Or I can buy metal stands from a metal artist. Specifically, I was working with one in Maryland for a while, and he created a new challenge for me. One, he had shoulder surgery and couldn't create for quite a while. And two, it was just a challenge in that I either had to pre-order the stands so I could make sure they fit with the glass, or I had to finish the glass and then wait to get the stands and hope the two matched up. And so in thinking through that challenge, I started thinking about how could I make sculptures that stood up and created some kind of a statement. And that led me to making glass stands. And to do that, I dam a really thick piece of glass and leave a hole in the middle, and I use something called fiber paper to keep that hole while it's in the kiln, all fusing together. And then I make sure that hole matches with the art that I want to use so that it will fit. And then I kiln form it in the kiln where I get the shape I want, whether it's taller or shorter. And then the glass fits into the glass stand. And so it becomes all glass, and it's actually easier to transport and ship than the metal stands are, in just in the sense of size.
That's so interesting. And what was the piece of paper that what's the type of paper that you said that you used to keep that gap open?
It's really not paper, even though they call it fiber paper. It's kind of almost like insulation, but it's a kind of fiber that can fire in the kiln, not burn up, and keep the glass from, the glass won't stick to it.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So what about the other different processes that we see in the show here, you know, you have different styles that you've used. You mentioned when we were doing the interview that there was like a big piece of glass that then you were able to slice and then open up, and it kind of did a butterfly symmetry effect. Could you explain that for us?
Again, the technique is called pattern bars. There's lots of ways that people make pattern bars. Glass artists make them. The way I like to make them is I come up with the color scheme I want, and I stack up glass, and not just necessarily straight up. It could be in, you know, multiple colors on a single layer, on top of strips of stainless steel that are laying on top of a dammed surface, so that when the glass flows through those stainless steel bars, it flows into this dammed surface, and it creates a very thick, hard to see on here, but a very thick piece, and however big I've dammed it. And then I take it to the tile saw and I slice it up. And I slice it at usually a 1/4 inch, but I sometimes do 3/8 inch, depends on how thick I want the piece of art. And when you slice it, as you open it up, as you say, as a book, the patterns match side to side, and then you can put them together in various different designs, you know, either standalone or in another component. And sometimes I go in when it's at 1700 degrees and it's finished flowing through the stainless steel bars. I will go in with a stainless steel rake and create more patterns by raking through that thick glass to just create more swirls.
Wow. There's so much process to it. So it's like there's so much to learn, and you did it in a few years, and now you have all of these pieces that represent your whole learning process. It's so great.
Some of the techniques, I really do like to get, I always say I'm getting in the kiln. I like to open the kiln when it's very hot and do things with the glass, whether it's creating a background that's where I've raked the glass and swirled it so that it creates the look of a flower, or just sometimes I want to go in and, you know, just create design when it's up at high temperature. And sometimes I just want to get in and move it. You know, maybe it's in a square shape and I get in and kind of change its shape while it's still hot.
Wow. So where do you do all this work? Where is this kiln?
My 3 kilns are in my garage.
Awesome. 3 kilns. Wow.
Yes, well, there's one big kiln that's about 41 inches by 28 to 30 inches, and extra deep, a couple of feet deep. So that's where I can do a lot of the big work. I have a kiln that's 17 by 17, where I can do a good amount of work. And the other kiln is an 8-inch kiln. That small kiln I primarily use for test pieces or small pieces. And the floor drops out. It's also a vitrograph kiln, which means I can pull cane, and there's a hole in the bottom of the kiln and I can pull glass through the kiln and create cane. So it's a unique kiln.
Nice. Yeah. So do you have to get like an extra outlet type of energy to be able to electricity?
Yeah, so the 2 smaller kilns are just a 110, 120 outlet kilns. The larger kiln is a 220 outlet. Thankfully, we happened to have one in the garage when, you know, I wanted to buy the kiln, so we didn't have to do any electrical work.
Oh, nice. That's good. That's what I was asking, if you had to do extra electrical work. We do have one question that came up from Karen. Is there a few techniques that you have made your own?
I have, yes, I say what I have done is combine various techniques I've used and then advance them. So I've taken different techniques I've learned and combined them into other techniques, and then maybe advanced them into others. So for instance, the pattern bars, I don't know anyone who's teaching flowing the glass into a dam and then raking it to create swirls in addition to that. So that's something I added to that I have not yet seen another glass. Not that they couldn't, I just haven't seen anyone do it. And also the fact that I like to combine casted glass along with the manipulated glass in the kiln, which is not something, again, that's overly unique. I've just not seen anyone do it like I have done it.
Right.
cast glass. And what that means is that I've created some type of a mold, either with something that's not glass, or I've just made it myself with some kind of a pattern. And then I melt glass into it, and then I break apart the glass, and it creates, more texture and depth, which is how I make a lot of the butterflies and the ladybugs and the flowers. And then I use unique forms to create the shapes or to make the butterflies fly. I don't use block molds or anything like that.
Hmm. I've noticed too, you've talked about learning and making work in different parts of the country, around the world. Could you give us a little insight of what that's been like?
Are you talking about me taking lessons from artists around?
Right, yeah, that's what it was.
Uh, yeah, every different glass artist who's gotten to the point where they're teaching advanced techniques have very unique styles of teaching and styles of work. And some of them are, I took classes with Patty Gray, who's well renowned, used to be in Portland and is now in California. And she does the most fast-paced classes you can imagine. You will come out of a 2-day class with 20 or 30 different new techniques and projects you've made. If you have a 5-day class, you can just imagine the amount of uh, work you can do with her. And she does a lot of go deep and unique. And she is where I learned first, had the opportunity to open the kiln and manipulate the glass, and got over that fear, which is really what it is a fear that it's going to be so hot you can't open it up. And that's really not the case. It is hot, but you wear cotton clothes and gloves and essentially look like a welder.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. That's good. Stay protected. Sure. Katrina says she's a fan of your butterflies. Can we talk more about how you make those butterflies?
Yeah, so I usually get inspired by actually going out and looking at sources for beautiful butterflies, or ones I take pictures of when I'm out on my hikes, and then try to, I won't say replicate, but use the color combinations I see in those butterflies. And I create a cast mold like I talked about earlier, because I like the texture that I can add by doing that. So I use um, silk mat, which is it's not a fiber blanket because it has none of the fiber in it that tends to create itchiness, but it's a material that you can manipulate. And then you can use a rigidizer to kind of rigidize that material into whatever shape you want. And I can create the indentations to create the look of the different patterns in a butterfly. And then I use the rigidizer, and then I heat that up in the kiln, and that makes that a reasonably rigid mold. And I can use that several times to create the butterflies. And then I typically put in little pieces of glass, or I sometimes grind it up really fine like sand to create that, like a powder to that I put in the very first layer to get all the grooves and the style. And then I add more glass to it from there. And then I cast it. And then after I've done casting it, I will put it back in for a fire polish, because the casting doesn't keep it shiny. The fire polish shines it back, the glass back up. And then I will use some kind of a form so I can get that flying butterfly, which is to me is a lot more fun than just making them flat.
Awesome. I was just getting this camera together so I can walk around and do some close-ups. If anybody has other questions, you can unmute yourself, and I'm going to get this close-up going.
Yeah,
Ginger,
go ahead. Yeah, you have a comment from Virginia saying that she really likes that you customize pieces.
yes, I will definitely do that. And I have done several for Virginia, and I appreciate that she likes to have something unique. It adds an extra challenge to me to learn what it is that a customer wants, and the color patterns or the style or the size, and then make it for them to fit whatever they're trying to fit in their home.
Yeah, and I'm sure that keeps it like exciting for you too, because then, sometimes when people probably ask you to do something that's a little bit out of the box or something you don't typically do, it is a nice fresh challenge.
It is that. I am right now working on 2 custom orders. I like to, not part of this exhibit, but I do make music note and other music related sculptures. And my custom order is a guitar. Specifically for those who know anything about guitars, it's a Les Paul
Oh,
Gibson guitar
yeah.
that he wants me to make in glass. And I've really been challenged to try to make it the way he wants it made.
Wow. How big is that? How big does he want it?
He wants it to be 20 inches tall before the stand.
Wow. That's amazing. You'll definitely have to share that with us when you complete it.
Oh, I will.
Yeah, that sounds like a big challenge. That sounds amazing.
No.
Wow. And I don't know if you've already covered this because I just hopped on here, but I really am like in awe of how you've made the 3-dimensional pieces magnet so that they stick. I think that's so smart.
I didn't cover that. One of the things I wanted to do was to, not only did I want the pieces to be away from the background, because a lot of the pieces with the right lighting show reflections behind them, and that can be quite fascinating, or at least I get fascinated by the reflections. And so I can use a couple of different techniques for that. I can use rare earth magnets, and and they are very strong. For anyone who doesn't know, they're very, very strong. And I also use standoffs that are made very specifically for glass. They're made by a glass artist to hang glass directly onto the wall or to nest glass from glass to glass. And so what that means is, like, if right now Ash is showing you some of the brushed stainless steel. On the brushed stainless steel, the artist that makes that actually welds a cleat on the back, and then I wire it for the gallery, but the cleat keeps it from tilting. It holds it straight against the wall. So, you know how paintings and things have a tendency to tilt. With glass, I really didn't want that. And so the cleat on the back of the brushed stainless steel makes it straight on the wall. But then, like the one that Ash is showing right now, that butterfly that's on that blue background is actually on there with a very large rare earth magnet. And so it can come off and on. It's not, you've got to hold it, right, because it's so magnetized. But what's good about that is that for transporting, shipping, or moving it around, you can take it apart, and the smaller pieces won't break or anything in shipment or movement. It also means that, for instance, Virginia wants a piece that I'm working with her now, and she wants to sometimes show it with flowers and sometimes show it with butterflies. So I can make both butterflies and flowers, and then she can switch them out to have different displays at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I think is really cool, is like you can change the composition whenever you want and like keep it fresh. I think
Yes.
that's so smart.
And also the standoffs, which I use a lot on the bigger butterflies and flowers, I also use those to put artwork onto the brushed stainless steel, so the actual art is standing away from the mount, which again creates reflections. But it also means that if a customer didn't want the brushed stainless steel, they could, I have the other component where it could be actually hung to the wall, just glass to the wall without that brushed stainless steel. So there's lots of options the way I'm using the mounts.
Wow. Yeah, I've never seen glass hung on the wall before. When the show was installed and I came into work, I was like, whoa, this like makes me a little nervous, but it's so beautiful displayed like that.
Yeah, nothing to be nervous about. Really, glass has been hanging on wall for a long time. Glass blowers, and make bowls and then use the standoffs I'm talking about to hang those by just one point. That standoff is strong enough to hold the glass with just one single standoff and won't break. Some of the other, I'm trying to look at what Ash is showing right now, but for those who've seen my work, I'm very inspired by nature, so most everything has got some kind of a nature theme. So I do either pattern bars, or I'm manipulating glass, or I'm casting the glass to create flowers or butterflies, or sometimes I just do a landscape. And when I do that, I create a background, and I've got first I go and make the tree trunk and the branches, and then I go back and I grind up glass, break it into small pieces to make the leaves. And um, I'm a kayaker, which is where I was this afternoon, was kayaking. And so I think there's a couple pieces in the gallery. I know there's a couple pieces in the gallery right now that were inspired by me kayaking. So the view is me at the, from me in the kayak looking at the shore and the water. I don't know if Ash, that's where Ash is headed.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like, are you talking about the ones that are like more landscape, I would call them, like with the trees and the horizon line? That makes a lot of sense to know that they were from your view in the kayak. I love knowing that, where that inspiration came from. Very cool.
Thank you.
Ada wants to know, did you already mention how you got interested and started with glass work?
Yes, I did. I've always been attracted to glass, and we love to travel and have traveled over the years and seem to come home more often than not with some piece of glass art from our travels. And when I decided I needed a creative outlet, I wanted to learn how the glass was made in our home. And it just led me down this journey.
Nice. Well, it was nice to be able to walk around the gallery and kind of zoom in for you there. Anybody else have any questions or any comments?
Yeah, Katrina asked if you've been to Murano, Italy. Like,
I have.
yeah.
Actually, just a few years ago, we did a whirlwind trip where we went to Switzerland and then took the train through the Alps to Italy, and then the train over to Venice. And then we also went to Murano. And I'm telling you, I had the best tour in Venice ever. It was a private tour where we got a private exhibition from a glass blower and then went into the archives or the viewing room of all these masters over centuries and all their phenomenal glass work. I don't know if my husband would, I think he thought he'd never get me out of there. It was the artwork was phenomenal, and to see the the different works over the eras and how things transitioned over time being made was pretty fascinating.
So moving forward with your practice, are there other processes or techniques that you're looking to acquire still?
What I want to do next, in addition to maybe doing a bit more landscapes, what I really want to do next is cast deeper. So I do the casting of the flowers and the butterflies, but I'd really like to do really thick pieces with maybe something in the middle of them, and then glass surrounding them in various shapes to create sculptures that maybe are something, maybe a flower or something inside it with a much bigger piece. So I think this winter I will be challenging myself to do those. That's going to, kiln work always is an interesting process. It takes multiple times in the kiln. You do a bit of work, you put the glass in the kiln, you program it, you can't look at it till it's over 1,000 degrees, then you can peek and kind of make changes up to a point, like I like to do, to manipulate. Then you have to let it cool down, and that process usually takes anywhere from 24 to 40 hours to complete on normal work. When I get into this thicker glass, that could be 4 or 5 days of annealing in the kiln, because when it's really thick, you have to spend a lot of time at a certain temperature on the cool down in order to make sure that glass anneals and is going to stay together and not crack at any point down the road. So that will be the biggest challenge for that, in addition to making sure that I embrace bubbles and I love bubbles in glass, but you don't want so many you can't see that thing in the middle. So that will be my challenge. I know a lot of glass artists that go thick, but I haven't really seen a lot that embed something else in it. They just tend to kind of swirl some color in it. So I think that's where I want to challenge myself next.
Interesting. Yeah, that'll keep you warm through the winter.
For sure.
We did have a question from Marissa is asking if there is a large glass community here in Kansas City or in the region that you're a part of or know about.
Yes, I know of several. I know several glass artists. I'm a member of Summit Art, and there are 5 glass artists in Summit Art, and we get together. Well, in normal times, we get together regularly. We actually did a Zoom call yesterday just to motivate each other. I also know of at least, I want to say, 6 glass blowers in the region. I've actually collaborated with Tyler Kimball at Monarch Glass Studio, they just opened another glass studio over at Belger. And there isn't any, there used to be 2 or 3 stained glass um, companies in town that sold glass and what have you, and they have all since left the area, well, closed, and one of them has moved to um, Oak Grove, so quite a bit outside of Kansas City. But that there still are a lot of glass artists, all of whom are doing very different styles and techniques throughout. So it's fun to talk with other glass artists.
Mm-hmm. So for glass artists that make smaller sculptures, I've seen, that's done in a kiln also, right?
Yeah, all of us use kilns, but we use them in different ways. Like glass blowers will use the kilns specifically to anneal their piece. So if you've ever watched a glass blower, when they're done blowing it, they stick it in, it's more of an upright kiln, but they stick it in there because it still has to go through that same annealing process that I was talking about that I use. But little small objects that you're probably talking about might be flame worked.
Okay.
So then there we take a rod or a cane, like I told you, I make vitrograph, which is a type of cane, and they take those rods and take a flame and they manipulate that and make it, but they still then have to put it in a kiln to anneal.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Nice. So many options with glass, and it's like seems so inaccessible because it's a glass piece and you don't think you could really do anything with it, but fire will do it. That's awesome. Barbara says, do you get inspired by animals in glass? I'm not quite sure.
Animals, well, yes, I have made several animals. I made an underwater scene for a customer that was full of all types of fish and coral reef and what have you. I've done some safari scenes. I actually have done several pets where people had pets they wanted to represent in glass, kind of like somebody does a pet portrait, but this time I did it in glass instead of as a photograph or a painting.
And were you?
I did a safari several years ago in South Africa and came back really interested in the safari animals, so I did a few of those.
I would think it'd be hard to control glass to really make it look like a pet. How was that?
I guess I have to share some with you because I think I did a pretty good job. But glass, the glass I use comes in sheets of glass, anywhere from a 12 by 12, but typically I buy it in 24 by 48 inch sheets, and then I cut that down. So to make an animal, I'm going to cut the shape, and then I'm going to, cut other components, and then I'll use shading with what I talked about earlier, powdered glass or various grits of glass to create the hair and the look, and I can make, eyes separately. So I make all the components separately and then bring them all together.
Mm-hmm.
I actually made an airplane for someone to represent their airplane and a sailboat. Again, it's not quite the same as a drawing or a painting. It's a representation because I'm cutting glass and I have some limits on how the colors I can make. I don't quite have the same palette as a painter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Very interesting.
Wanda, this is Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Of everything that you've done, do you have a favorite?
The last one I made.
Okay. Okay.
I have some that I am really proud of because they were very challenging and stressful sometimes, like the airplane, trying to get I had a picture of the airplane sitting on the ground, but the person wanted it flying in the air. And that required me to do some research to get the angles right for it to fly and yet show the number that's on the side of the plane, and to do all the striping to match exactly the way the swoops and stuff were on the plane. So that was a challenge. But in general, I have to say the last thing I made is almost always my favorite until the next thing I make.
Well, an exciting thing happened today. One of your pieces sold, the deep blue. That's exciting.
Oh, yay.
Congrats to that. Yeah.
The deep blue is actually a technique I didn't even mention here, and it's where I take ground up powdered glass and I mix it with a medium, and I lay that on top of another piece of glass, and then I drop gal oil on it, and that gal oil creates little flowerets that just kind of spread that powdered glass, or that, well, it's really kind of a liquidized powdered glass. And then I put it in the kiln and it creates a crackly look in the glass. I think I see Julie on here, and I think I'm seeing Julie. But anyway, I had that technique in place, and she actually asked me to make lanterns, panels for the lanterns with that technique after she saw when I made that. So there's several pieces in the gallery with using that technique.
Nice. And Kim asked how long the show's up. The show is open until January 8th. And if you'd like to see the show on our website, if you go to kansascityartistscoalition.org underneath exhibitions and go to Wanda Tyner's exhibition, there is a 360 virtual walkthrough of the gallery. So you can use your mouse and click here and there and zoom up to places, to different pieces and whatnot. And also on that page, all the pieces have their own individual picture and are for sale through PayPal. So that's a great way to experience the show virtually and get it all in. There you go. Yeah. So Marissa sent the link in. There you go. You can see the virtual tour there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate Kansas City Artists Coalition, Marissa and Ash and Jessica, and everything you guys have done. The amount of extra work you're doing right now when a lot of people aren't comfortable going in a gallery to do the videos, do this artist talk, to have that 360 and the art available on sale, and lots of ways for people to view it, and for me to share it with my patrons and friends and family around the world. I really appreciate the extra work you all are putting in for the show.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, these are things that are new to us, but something that we like those elements to, these are elements that would be nice to keep, to be able
Yes.
for everybody to experience it. Yeah.
And I also appreciate the fact that you have put in extra ventilation, ventilation in the gallery to make it safe for all of you and for anyone who's in the gallery.
Right. Very true. Yes. Thank you, Marissa. Well, kind of wrapping up here. Have a little bit longer on the Zoom call if you'd like. Anything else we haven't covered, or anybody else have comments? Yeah. Well, I do have this recorded, so it'll upload and download whatever it needs to do, and I'll clip it and I can send it to you. And we'll have it on our website. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate everybody joining this evening.
Yes, thank you. Everybody coming on board. All right. Okay. Everyone, I think, is logging off. It's good to see you, Wanda.
Thank you, Ash.
Yep. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.